following announcement has been paid for by the Celtic World Order.
Oh there, good afternoon to all of you out there. Thank you once again for joining us here at Celtic World Order Podcast for a rare wee afternoon show. Why not? Let's go mental. As you can see, I'm joined by the ever handsome Josh because there's a lot to talk about. Of course, there was a result yesterday. There was another result yesterday that certainly helped us out off the back of rubbish midweek. But the big focus is, of course, on off-the-field matters, mainly Brendan Rodgers' comments around about the fans, around about Kieran Tierney. And we'll get down to that. But just before we kick off, Josh, how are you, my friend?
Yeah, very good, Steve-o. Since I was last on here, actually, about a week ago, been an interesting week for football. Celtic have gone up, they've gone down, they've gone up again. So, it's been... there's never a dull moment following Celtic, is there?
Absolutely. It's been very busy. And of course, the schedule keeps on going. It's relentless because midweek we've got another game to look forward to, but let's get this one out of the way. And before we crack on, as always, a wee bit of housekeeping. As always, thank you very much to every single one of you. If you're a returning subscriber, we greatly appreciate your help. The numbers are really pushing and we want to kick that on into 2025. If you want to help out the channel, you can. Member section, donation to channel, $1.99 helps put it all together. Like, of course, the original, the bold 420 somewhere. And we greatly appreciate it. If you want to get involved in that, if you want to get us elsewhere, check us out on X at CWPod1888. Of course, we're on that thing called Blue Sky. We're on TikTok, and you can catch up on Spotify. So that is indeed it. Let's get down to business, and we'll jump straight in. Let us know what your thoughts here are. As we know, the smoke hasn't really quite settled off the back of the heavy and quite frankly embarrassing defeat to Rangers midweek. We went into a home game, perfect for a bounce back, wasn't it? St.Mirren, you know what you're getting from them. They're always a tough side, but I think fans were chomping at the bit. They were looking for that reaction. They were looking for that swashbuckling performance, laying them to the sword, great from start to finish. It wasn't quite that. And of course, that resulted in our manager, there's no other way of putting it, shooting for the hip, taking aim at the fans. He was no happy. You could see it. As some of my friends used to say, Armile man, you couldn't straighten his coat with an iron. You could see it when he came into that press conference. Brendan Rodgers was fizzing for one reason, and it was us fans that got it. Was he justified? Was he on mark, or was it a complete misfire and a misstep at a quite a crucial period for us? Josh, let's go straight in there, mate. Give me your reading on Brendan Rodgers.
I think he was a man who was annoyed after the game, watching the full press conference, and I would urge anyone to actually go and watch the full thing after they've read the quotes, because you get a real sense for the mood of the man and his demeanour and the mood in the room at the press conference at the time. So it was in a mood, definitely, at something, and that thing was the frustration of the fans. Now, coming off the back of a defeat at Ibrox, such as the manner of that defeat, 3-0, Celtic had one shot the whole game. The fans were expecting a big response, right? Whether that's right or wrong to expect a big response given the run of games, the schedule at the minute. Celtic go win the game 3-0, so on the face of it, brilliant result, and you couldn't ask for much more. But we know the Celtic fans are demanding, very demanding of the team, and perhaps rightly so. They pay good money to go and watch a team every week, and they want to see the best version of that. In first 20 minutes, it wasn't great, but you need a bit of patience. Rodgers, in his words, he was very much doubling down on his tactics and saying that when we play the ball back, we're not stopping an attack, we're building a new attack. And I remember him saying that a lot of times throughout his first spell in charge. I read his autobiography over Christmas just there, and he very much was saying that, like, we have to play the ball back first to generate a new attack. And that's what the team were continually looking to do at the weekend, and they get the rewards. They score 2 goals at the end of the half, and they're 2-0 up at the break. Is it the right time to attack the fans in the manner he did? I don't think it is. Celtic have, as much as people will argue the league is over, you've still got to go and win it. There's still 18 games to go in the campaign. You've still got to go and win the Scottish Cup to win a treble. You've still got to go and beat Young Boys to qualify for the Champions League knockouts. So there's still a lot of things to be done this season, and Rodgers pointed that out himself. We're only at the halfway mark. So it is at the halfway mark, in the midst of the season, in the midst of a gruelling run of fixtures, the correct time to be causing divisions among the support? I don't think it is. But he had a bee in his bonnet, and he got that bee in his bonnet certainly off it when he came in. to the press room and said what he did. I think he's slightly justified in it, to be honest, because Celtic have no divine right and no entitlement to be coming at home to St.Mirren and being 2 and 3-0 up within the first 15 minutes. And that's Rodgers' viewpoint. And I think everyone would agree with that. But at the same time, fans want to see more life and more energy and more vigour in the team in the first 15, 20 minutes than what they did at the weekend. That's not necessarily going to be the case when you have a tough fixture schedule like Celtic do.
It's packed in January, yeah.
They've only had 3 international breaks so far this campaign. Usually right now, you'd be in a winter break at the minute, and we'd have nothing to talk about. So it's good that we don't have a winter break, and there is games. But at the same time, there's 9 matches alone in January, so it's going to take its toll on the players, and they're not going to be at their swashbuckling best every single game. And they weren't at their swashbuckling best at the weekend, Sunday, but still come up with a 3-0 victory. So I think it was interesting from Rodgers. He definitely had something he wanted to get off his chest, got it off his chest. On the whole, I partly agree with what he says about the fans and the groans, but is this the right time to be saying it? I don't think so.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, and I am going to be the other side of this coin here then, because whereas I acknowledge exactly what the manager's saying, I think that he's a mile out with this one. Now, bear in mind, Brendan Rodgers, he is right to point out that we have no divine right to do these things. He is, pointing out that we've had great success since the start of January, basically last year, all the way through. And when you look at it, bar a defeat to Rangers and bar a defeat to Dortmund, there's really not much to complain about. So I do understand where he's coming from. However, as you say, it's all about timing, but not just about timing. It's about how you put your point across. And I think this is the big issue. This is a Brendan Rodgers who really, really divided the support coming in. He had to win over favour with a lot of detractors, and he's been able to do that by large. He has. I just feel that a combination of factors with this, it's probably setting him back a good couple of months or more with certain, portions of our fan base, and I think rightfully so. It's the way he attacks it. Comments like, if you know football. So that means guys like yourself and I who have been watching football all our life, some of it has played it, we're passionate about it, we're invested in it. We know absolutely nothing because I am not an elite coach with a UEFA license. I can't possibly sit here and talk about football. The people who are sitting paying week in, week out, hundreds of pounds, thousands in a year to invest in Celtic, to go and sit and watch it, they're not entitled. They are wrong. They don't know about football because they can't understand that what they're seeing is not entertaining. That's the thing that he needs to remember. Brendan Rodgers is the manager of Celtic. He's there to get us winning games by no matter what means. However, he continually says, and you've heard it in various press conferences, it's about winning and winning in a certain way. Fans expect they want a certain sort of style. He knows that. He continually says that to fans. So you can't expect him to not voice some moans and groans when they don't feel that they're getting served that up. It's like ourselves. We come on here, I know it's slightly different, but we come on here to talk about Celtic. Now, if we were completely boring, if we were garbage, if our opinions or views were just absolute nonsense, people who subscribe, people who view, people who donate to the channel would stop doing it. They would complain. They would call us out. And it's the exact same. He puts himself in the firing line in the same way that we, on a very small scale, put ourselves in the firing line. You will live and die by your actions of what you do. And he needs to get that into his head. I think he's right to protect the players. But I think that the way that he voiced it was shocking. This, if you don't know football, that kind of stuff is absolute nonsense. And it's only going to rub fans up the wrong way.
I think what we've got to remember is as well, I think a lot of it's said heat in the moment. See, when you consider if you know football, see if Rodgers is sitting in a press conference at Lennoxtown on a Tuesday afternoon saying that, I don't think he's hitting out with that patter. I genuinely think that he's just come off the touchline. He's what, two feet away from the sidelines where fans are shouting and getting annoyed. And I was in the stadium, I could hear the groans 20 minutes in. And he's hearing that. His ego, we know he's a bit of an egomaniac is the word. It certainly takes a bit of a battering when something like that happens. And I think he's a man who's come into the press conference, heat of the moment, visibly angry, and wanted to get that off his chest. If you know football, doesn't sound great, definitely. Condescending would be the perfect word to describe that.
Yep.
I would argue. But I think in certain ways, looking at it from his viewpoint, so he'll think, leave Brendan alone, you spoiled brats. In his view, he'll be thinking, so this is my tactics. These are tactics that have won Celtic the double last season, 2 trebles in my first season. And when we're playing the ball back, like we've done several times, people are groaning. So therefore, he must think they don't understand football. That is not the case. Everyone who goes to that stadium knows a decent bit about football. They wouldn't be going to games regularly if they didn't. I think he's misunderstood it in the sense that the fans want to see Celtic playing with more energy, more vigour, more on the front foot, and perhaps some people don't understand that you have to play the ball back to generate a new attack. I'm sure that he'll be in the media before the game against Dundee United, and I'll be very interested to hear what he has to say. And I'll be very interested as well to see what Wednesday night's going to be like inside the stadium and how things are. I'm sure we'll get onto the Tierney stuff in a bit because I've got another viewpoint on that, I'm sure. But yeah, that's my whole take. I think I don't know, it's an interesting one. Definitely, like you say, firing from the hip, and it's not the correct time to say it.
So people are saying this, and I can see it along. I believe it's one of those sort of rock and a hard place. It's about tact. Now, by and large, Brendan Rodgers is very good, media trained, says the right things at the right time. It's not the first time that he said these kind of things. When this sort of timing comes in, if you remember about Pyro, you are not real fans if you're doing that. Comments like that. Now, again, whether you agree with Pyro or not, the safety element and all that kind of stuff around it, the people who are setting off those Pyro are some of the most committed Celtic fans that you'll ever see, namely the ultras groups, right? And whereas they may divide opinion on support, and they think that for everything good they do, there's a lot that detracts from it. It's neither here nor there. The fact of the matter is they will travel all over the world to watch Celtic. They'll invest thousands and thousands of pounds of their money. And yes, maybe in some cases they'll do things that is not the best practice and best way to support the club or to benefit the club when it comes to fines and all that kind of stuff. But to say that they are not real fans is, again, quite a scathing way to tackle an issue and not very, P's and Q's, bedside manner. Now, that came off the back of a great period of success. And listen, I'm not saying we're not in a good period of success. All I'm getting at is plain sailing. So it kind of went under the radar. It just was brushed aside and no one really cared about it. The difference is, had he said this a couple of weeks down the line when we had taken care of these domestic games, we'd perhaps beat Young Boys of Bern, got ourselves secured into the next phase of Europe, and then came out when there's a lot more credit in the bank and people have maybe forgot or they're less scarred and hurt the rawness of the loss to Rangers is away, then again, he could probably get away with it. He might not say it as angrily or as blunt, but he could say something similar and probably get away with it. He's picked a very, very peculiar time for me, as you says, and I just get the feeling, I don't know if this is you, this isn't a pile on to Brendan Rodgers, this is not slagging the guy off, this is an observation on something that he said towards people like ourselves as fans, and that's why we're commenting on it. Do you feel that Brendan's ego has perhaps been bashed quite heavily off the back of, quite frankly, a pathetic performance against Rangers, against a guy that's supposedly a complete and utter idiot, result yesterday aside, of course, and a team of injury-ridden nobodies, that he's found that hard, and the fallout from fans, the fallout from the media, he's found that really hard to take, and unfortunately, we're the ones that have bear the brunt of it. Is this more to do with Brendan not dealing with the emotions of what's happened more than ourselves not dealing with it?
Well, it could be. We spoke about it just before we come on, and it's the first ever time Brendan Rodgers has been in the media and managed the game straight off the back of a loss to Rangers. So it was only second ever loss to Rangers as Celtic manager on Thursday. The only other time was just before the winter break, a 1-0 loss at Ibrox in 2018 to Steven Gerrard's Rangers. And after that, Celtic had the winter break, come back 4 weeks later. The loss to Rangers was distant in memory, and Celtic just got on with the second half of the season, and he didn't really have to answer many questions surrounding it or face fans after it in the stands. It was different this time around because, 3 days later, straight back into action against St.Mirren. So it's a learning point for him, perhaps, in the sense that when straight off the back of a loss to Rangers, your greatest rivals, fans are going to be annoyed, fans are going to expect a big response. So maybe it's a learning point for him in that sense, and every manager has that throughout their career. Brendan Rodgers is one of the more experienced managers in the league, having applied his trade down south, come up to Celtic, dominated domestically without having much of a challenge, went back down south, done really well with Leicester, wins him an FA Cup, a Community Shield. But this is one point of his managerial career that he's not really experienced yet, losing to Rangers and having to go straight back into action after it. So it could be a learning point for him. In that sense, I agree with you there. So we'll just have to wait and see then if Celtic have a lose to Rangers again under his tenure, and he's in the media and into a game straight off the back of it, how he acts again. Maybe he'll learn from this experience. We'll just have to wait and see.
So just to sort of come full circle on all the Rodgers kind of stuff here, seen a couple of opinions here. Recall back to his first time at Celtic. Now, maybe we're digging too deep and we're reading into something, and it really is maybe just a case of struggling with the fallout for the Rangers thing. As you say, is unfamiliar territory for him, having to climb back on the horse, put on a smile and power through whilst there's some sort of level of criticism. But remember back to his first term when we started getting some of these really sort of peculiar, strange press conferences for Brendan. It was complete chalk and cheese, so he was full of bravado and the jokes and everything before the Rangers, and then obviously after it there was a sort of sense of real, oh my God, this has actually happened, and a bit of acknowledgement that it wasn't there. He's got criticised, that's rumbled through, and then we've obviously got where we are today. Now, some people are suggesting that, do you get this feeling that maybe there's things of old rearing their head, that he's perhaps not going to be getting sufficient resourcing around about, is there potentially behind the scenes rifts, or is that just scratching in a wee bit too much and looking for something that isn't quite there?
Yeah, I think that's reading too much in between the lines, as we would say. In his post-match interview with the BBC that went on Radio Scotland after the game, Rodgers said he was 100% sure that the club will do all they can to back him in January. And give him what he needs in terms of fresh faces and fresh additions. I think that's reading too much in between the lines, and I'm sure everything is fine and dandy between this behind the scenes, and I wouldn't be surprised in the next couple of weeks, next couple of months, if there's a new contract on the table for the manager.
I love stuff like this. Frank must just enjoy coming on here to try and have a back and forward. I don't know if you know me, I'm like 40. I know a lot of that, so it's the benefits of being this good looking. I look very young, so thank you very much for thinking I couldn't possibly have lived through the 90s. But yeah, again, I'm not sure if you watched at the start. We've turned around and says that we're in a fantastic position. It's just about reading between the lines, because fans do have an entitlement to be annoyed. The very small amount of people who turned up to Celtic Park by proportions in their 30,000 or something like that, but went out and braved the absolute Baltic freezing cold to go and watch Celtic because they wanted entertained, and quite frankly, where it got set up. Thank you very much. We'll see you later. Frank, it's been good having you around on this show, but no anymore, mate. See you later. If you can't be constructive, don't bother watching. I just think sometimes people want to watch podcasts to be an idiot. There you go. Anyway, so back to a sort of wee bit more constructive adult conversations. So the thing is, the manager is facing uncertain territory, and I think he's just reacting to it. The big question I would say is it's the timing in terms of how that might impact. That's the thing that I can't really get my head around. Remember last season, he had built up a lot of credit in the bank with players, with the fans, we were performing well. His tact was, we need quality, suggesting the players weren't quite good enough. It eroded a wee bit of confidence among the players. We dropped results. We were able to pick ourselves back up, get back on the horse and push on and win. I just am a wee bit slightly concerned that what we're going to be getting here is that it could create a sort of real divide of the fans. And ultimately that does translate onto the pitch. So hopefully we'll get performances from it, and maybe, I dare say, he will be asked about this in his press conference. We might get something of, he's never going to back down. He's never going to back down. He's never going to say, oh, I'm really sorry I offended you. He's not going to do that. But he might give us something a wee bit more. And you and I spoke about it before we came on here. Do you think the manager's maybe been 100% honest with us? Because after the game against Rangers, he says, sometimes it's hard to get up for things when you are so far ahead. Maybe that played into it. He also alluded to the heavy schedule and says, perhaps we are a little bit tired. I'm not going to use it as an excuse, but let's be honest, it probably is. Would it have been better if he just came out and says, I know you don't want to hear it, but it's a heavy schedule. The guys have been going to well week in, week out. We've not had the international break. We've not had the winter break, which we've been normally used to. It's a learning for everybody. We're finding the drop-off in this first time round. We will improve. It could have just come out and said something like that rather than taking pot shots.
He could have said, yeah, like, and I don't think the fans would have been too annoyed to hear this. Listen, the team, we've got a lot of games. We've got 9 games on in January. We'd usually have a winter break. There's going to be somewhat of a drop-off in terms of performance levels. It's natural. But once we'll be doing our best to get results, doing our best to win the games, and our aim is to continually win the games. Now, he could have said that, yeah, and that would have been absolutely fine. I'm sure everyone would have agreed with it. But I don't think that's his point. I think his genuine point is that he wants fans to stop getting annoyed when the ball gets passed back because the team are building a new attack. I think that's the crux of his point. And listen, I think that the fans, a lot of the people I've spoken to be fair, agree with him on the point that he made about that. We'll just have to wait and see what the reaction is on Wednesday evening with a performance level. In terms of if the ball gets passed back a couple of times in the opening 15 minutes. If there is groans, see what Rodgers does, if he acts in a certain way, if he says anything after the game. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens.
So I've got something interesting here that hopefully will give a wee bit of, context to this idea of Celtic always back pass. And I do admit, at times I'll sit and watch it and I'll get frustrated. I'll get frustrated with the side to side and I'll get frustrated with the back pass. So what did I do? I went and I looked at all the stats from all the Celtics league games this season. Now, you might be interested to find out the following, that on average in a game, Celtic makes 731 passes in a game. Pretty heavy, pretty large, pretty possession-based, as we well know. From those passes, on average, we make 202 forward passes, direct forward passes. However, on average, we also make 116 back passes in a match. Everything else in between is either side to side or they count long balls as being a separate different thing. So, contextualise that. Yesterday, we made 671 passes in the match. 194 were forward passes and 117 were back. So we were pretty much bang on our season average in the league. So what does that mean? What does that translate to? Why am I bringing that up? Well, the reality that I'm trying to get is fans, in my opinion, or he's latching on to the back pass and the groans to that. Why? Because that scene has been negative. That scene has been going back, quite literally, it's going back the way. But I think that the fans have actually been seeing that every single game this season. What's been the difference has been the energy levels and moving the ball about. Those passes where they're back, forward, side to side, they've been faster, they've been a bit more lively, there's been a bit more energy in the play. I think that's what the problem here is. It's less to do with how we're playing in terms of the numbers and the number of passes and where they're going. It's just the energy levels that are put into them. Is that a fair observation, do you think?
Yeah, I think, yeah. And the lack of energy levels, I've been saying the whole time, can be down to a lot of changes in the team every week and the fixture schedule, the heavy fixture schedule. Celtic were at their best this season, I would argue, in that first 5-6 weeks of the season when it was one game a week. The first couple of weeks where Rodgers didn't really have to change the team. Brilliant rhythm, and they started the season in fine fettle. Schmeichel kept a clean sheet in his first 5 or 6 league games. Managed to beat Rangers 3-0. Won away at St.Mirren, won away at Easter Road. Went home to Kilmarnock and Flag Day. All those games kept a clean sheet in. So there's naturally going to be a drop-off in energy levels when you've got 2 games a week. Literally in the past 2 months, international breaks aside, the only week I can remember where Celtic have not had a midweek game is between Dundee United away at Tannadice in the cup final. I can't remember any other week where Celtic have had a free week. And looking at the fixture schedule ahead throughout January, there is no midweek free. Got a midweek game every single week.
And it's
So
condensed.
Naturally, there's going to be a drop-off in energy levels for the team.
See, I think as well, here's another thing as well, just to finalise on the stats before we move on to the other section there. Celtic won 3-0 at Parkhead against Rangers, as we all well know, and everybody was ranting and raving about how great a performance that was. In that game, Celtic made 529 passes, 186 forward, 91 backwards, well below all these averages. But, 91 back passes in that game, 117 yesterday in Falkirk morning. It's not far off. We won 3-0 against Rangers, and everybody said, well, how great performance it was. So my point is, as I say, is the difference is what you saw yesterday, what folk were moaning and groaning about, is what we have seen in every single game this season consistently. It's just been how we've applied ourselves. And I think, as you say, the tiredness is coming in. And there's no harm in Brendan being honest with us about that. I think we can see it. The guys are going to the well time again. Same players. And they do look tired. I said that when Rangers beat us. I said Rangers looked fitter, faster, more determined. And it was clear. All right, they had a lot of different guys who'd been brought in the team that hadn't been playing, for the rest of that season. So, of course, they were going to look more lively, and they had a point to prove. Hopefully, this is just something that evens itself out and it takes care of itself. But, yeah, potentially a misstep, but I wouldn't like to see any fans. We're sitting here talking about it, giving our opinions. I can see people are angry about it, but hopefully it is what it is. The key point is get behind the team. We will always do that. We might not be happy with how things have done. We've seen it before. We've not been happy with the club's been getting run. There's been protests against them, but we've always backed the guys in the field, and I think that'll come. Winter's a bit of a weird bit as well. Condensed, reduced capacity. It's freezing. Everybody's miserable. And that comes out. But yeah, we'll kick on. But the other thing then is Greg Taylor and Kieran Tierney. Now, this one I did find very, very peculiar. Tierney getting his song sang. Fans are fans just rightly excited. It's not like they were singing, give us Tierney, Taylor shite. They were singing a Kieran Tierney song. That's what they were doing, right? And the manager, again, is latched onto that and said it's disrespectful to the man in situ, the guy that's on the field at that time. And we saw Taylor got himself up and off the pitch nice and quick. So I dare say he was affected by it. Is that, again, just another reach for the manager? Is that just a clip on to his emotions of the other thing?
I think it's another heat of the moment comment, especially if you watch the press conference and you see the manner in which he answered it. And when he was asked about it, he was very much quick off the mark. If you, it's very hard to describe. If you watch it, you'll know what I mean. And Rodgers' answer to the question, the immediate answer and the immediate fire down. First thing he said, disrespectful to Greg Taylor. It was as if he answered it as if he was in a mood. And I think that was apparent throughout the press conference. For me, I think he misses the mark in terms of the Tierney chant. Like you say, Celtic fans aren't singing Kieran Tierney's name to put down Greg Taylor. The Celtic fans are singing Kieran Tierney's name because they're excited to see him come back to the club. Yep. And they're hoping that he comes back to the club. And I think he will eventually, whether it's this month or in the summer. So they're just excited about that naturally. They're not putting down Greg Taylor. I think a lot of Celtic fans appreciate Greg Taylor and his contributions to this club over the past 5.5 years he's been at the club. 198 appearances, so 2 more and he gets that 200 mark. He's won 9 trophies, 30 goals and 30 assists and 9 goals, and 198 appearances. He averages a trophy every 22 appearances. Mm-hmm. So everyone appreciates Greg Taylor. There was Player of the Year shouts for him under Ange Postecoglou. It's not as if everyone has suddenly turned on Greg Taylor. You're poor. People just accept. And yet again, this goes back to the argument earlier about Celtic fans having high standards, and perhaps rightly so, that they think they can upgrade in Taylor. And I think a lot of fans would agree with that. But at the same time, if he signed a new contract and he was the backup to Tierney, I think everyone would be happy with that. Yeah. But at the same time, I think everyone would also be happy and content if Greg Taylor said, no, I want to be first choice somewhere else. I'm going to move. I'm going to maybe not get a higher wage. I'm going to move elsewhere, be a first choice, play regular games week in, week out, playing the big games, and that's going to be my career path. No one would be too gutted about that either. No. I think the going up the tunnel thing, people are making a lot about it. Well, in Rodgers, what he said after the game was, he almost had a broken nose and he was bleeding. So I think he just went straight up the tunnel because he had an injury to the nose. I don't think it was anything to do with the chance or anything. Listen, he might have been naturally discontent. And I'm sure, as Roger said, the press conference, naturally you would be. I probably would be if I was playing left back for Celtic. And then I'm the first choice at the minute, which Taylor is. Fans are chanting another guy's name to come in as first choice, regardless of why they're doing it. You're going to feel a certain way. I think that's only natural. But at the same time, Taylor and the manager have to understand that they're not singing that because they dislike him. They're singing it because they're excited that Kieran Tierney might be coming back to Celtic. So I think that one can be simply wrapped up in that, and that's my take on it.
No, I totally agree, and that's the thing. You know, we come on here and we speak about players varying degrees. You know, whether we're singing their praises or we're criticising them. And as we always say, no matter what we pass an opinion on a player, by general, it's either an isolation of that performance at that material time or their form based on a few games. And that is what it is. And sometimes Taylor's been one of those guys that, you know, he's always been maligned, and it's probably that unfortunate situation because he's a homegrown player. We always seem to, for whatever reason, no matter who you are, the homegrown players always get held to this, you know, different standard. Even the likes of Scales, for example, gets held to a completely different standard to other players than some of the international, you know, the foreign imports, if you want to call them that. And that's the nature of the beast. What I would say with regards to Taylor is I fully agree. Under Postecoglou, fantastic. What a turnaround. And one thing you can't say about Greg Taylor, whether you love him or loathe him, is that he does give his all the time that he's played for Celtic. He's been a fantastic servant to the club, and he's been a real surprise package. Yeah, do you know what? He's not been pushed. He's never really had somebody, you know, vying for position with him that you've maybe seen him evolve again and get more out of him. He's been a steady Eddie, and he's been a shoe-in. And probably with that almost guaranteed position, you are going to get far more inconsistencies. But in terms as a player and an ambassador for the club, he can't be faulted. You look at all the behind-the-scenes stuff. You look at how much time he spends with fans, whether it's doing all the charitable stuff or it's standing outside and just signing autographs and taking photos and all that. He is invested. He doesn't get an unfair rep at times, and, you know, gets pelters thrown at him, even when they're not justified. He just seems an easy target. But I think that when we look at it here, the question comes round. Some folk are saying, do you think it's because the manager thinks that he's getting ran out the club, that he's not signing a new contract? I don't know, Josh. I mean, what's your thoughts on it? Do you think fans have got that now stage where they might not be their cup of tea? And if you say, do you want to keep him about? You say, yeah, we'll have him as an able deputy. Let's just say Kieran Tierney's going to be the number one. Taylor's an able deputy. Yeah, let's have him around. Do you think it's the nature of it? It looks almost on paper as if he's been mulling around, assessing his options and non-committal to the club, that folks say, well, if you don't want to be here, then lay your cards out on the table? Because there's no doubt in my mind Taylor's been offered something of a contract and he's clearly not taking it to this point.
Yeah, definitely. I think there will have been an offer on the table for him, and he's assessing his options. One thing's for sure, though, although his contract expires at the end of the season, we can assure ourselves that Greg Taylor will be giving his all for the club and for the cause, even though he may not be committed to Celtic after this season. That's what we're sure of. And I think his future is uncertain, definitely, and that's never great for any situation with a player or manager. And maybe Rodgers he's kind of latched on to the fact among the support that maybe Taylor is underappreciated by certain people in certain groups, and I think that is the case, definitely. And maybe he was just looking to hit it back at that point, but he could have done it in a better way. The chants were not disrespectful to Greg Taylor at all. It's inaccurate in that statement. They were just, like I say, fans excited about Tierney coming back.
Yeah,
it's just, I think Rodgers maybe reading too much into that, and just because he was in a mood, that's what he ended up hitting out with. But Taylor, like I say, you'd be delighted if he signed a new deal and he was the backup to Kieran Tierney, because that would be really good. Greg Taylor's proven he can do it in domestic games. Against Rangers, although he gave away a goal, he scored and makes up for it. Your St Johnstone at home's, your Motherwell at home's, your Aberdeen aways, where he came on and changed the game against Aberdeen away a couple of weeks ago, actually, setting up the winner. He's proven he can do it. So having him as to be alongside Tierney, yes, that would be a terrific scenario for Celtic, in my opinion. Two homegrown guys who know what it means, who know what the club mean, But personally, if I was putting money on it now, I don't think Taylor will stay.
No, see, I said when we spoke about the merits of Tierney coming back, the one thing I said is I think that is the kind of player that we need because it offers us a variation. I genuinely believe that you could go to a proper, legit 3-5-2 and you could play someone like Taylor with Carter Vickers and Johnson at the back three and ram out midfield and even go mental and play two up front. Who would have thought it? We could maybe do that. I just don't feel at this moment in time with Wyatt or indeed even Scales or Taylor, we have the capability and the talent pool to go to a legit back three. As you say, it would be nice to have the two of them round together. And if Taylor were to stay and Tierney was to come in, just as I'm saying, could he learn? I know he's maybe that far on his development that you could say, well, can he really learn and play a new system and stuff? But could he be developed just by proxy, working alongside somebody like Tierney, seeing what he does, where, as I say, it could be fit in a different formation. You could see another evolution of him, or do you think it's natural progression? It's time for him to move on.
There's two sides of the debate, actually. So you mentioned a 3-5-2 there, and I could see Taylor playing on the left of a 5 in the midfield, and then Tierney going in the left centre back role like he does for Scotland, and also getting up and down the left-hand side in tandem with Taylor. So I could see that happening. But I just feel his mood, just the noises you're hearing from the club, the reports you're hearing in the newspapers that Taylor wants to go elsewhere and be the first choice left back. He's not going to get that Celtic next season if Kieran Tierney's coming back. I think he's aware of that. And I think it will be the case that Dinamo Zagreb is the most rumoured club at the minute.
Strange that one, isn't it?
It's a very strange one. Looking at it on paper, though, Dinamo Zagreb, Champions League club, living out in Croatia, a much better climate than we have here. It doesn't get dark at 4 p.m. So a much better lifestyle for him. He's just got married. His wife is expecting a baby, so they'll be looking for somewhere to bring up their child. And Fabio Cannavaro is the manager at Dinamo Zagreb, a legendary Italian footballer, so a chance to work under him as well and go and live out there for a couple of years, win trophies because you'll be guaranteed that there, or a similar standing to Celtic in their own domestic league, and try a new lifestyle because for all his life, played for Kilmarnock and Celtic, it might be time for him to go elsewhere because he probably will be the first choice there. And I think on paper, from the outside looking in, given he's not actually a Celtic fan growing up as much as he does give his all for the club and die or bleeds for the cause, as Rodgers said, he wasn't a Celtic fan growing up. We all know that. And that does add a wee extra bit into it for me in terms of Kieran Tierney, Celtic fan, although he couldn't really turn down the move to Arsenal.
Of course.
If it was Tierney in this scenario and he was as good as Taylor, I think there would be a natural bit in him that would want to stay because he's a Celtic fan, whereas Taylor isn't. And he gives his all for the club, we know that. But the chance to go away, Dinamo Zagreb, I think it's a really good opportunity for him if he did go.
No, I agree. And that's the thing. I think when we look back on this, we as fans will always get to that stage where, like, if you want to be here, you want to be here. If you don't, and see you later, the door is there. With that in mind, if it looks as if he's going to get himself moving on, the Tierney thing is swirling about. Could we see him in this January? Remains to be seen. I would like to see us try to force it through. What does the manager do then? How does he react? Based on all this nonsense there on Sunday about Kieran Tierney chance and upsetting Greg Taylor and things like that, does he protect him, as we like to say, remove him from it, give by his chance now and let him take a sit down, take stock and make his decision this month? Do we just keep the status quo? Do we just keep playing him?
It'll be interesting, actually. Given the run of games and the fact that Taylor started the last 2 matches now and he played 90 minutes at the weekend, and there's a trip to Ross County coming up on Saturday, I think Wyatt plays on Wednesday night, to be honest. But Taylor, the manager, said after the game that his head's still in it. He's still fighting for the cause, bleeding for the cause, giving his all. So I think Rodgers will have no qualms about playing Taylor, regardless of what his future may look like. At the end of the day, though, a report from Croatia this morning, not a clue how credible the outlet is, they said that Zagreb are upping their efforts to sign Taylor permanently this month. They're going to reportedly ask Celtic what the price is. So it could well be a scenario where Taylor goes there this month, Celtic get a fee, and then it's a 9th-hour, 6-month loan of Kieran Tierney, and then you sign him for free in the summer. I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case.
So how does that look for you? Because whilst we're on transfers, obviously we've seen
Yeah.
that the Welsh move to Michelin's pretty
Yeah.
much that is almost signed, sealed and delivered. We've also got Genoa are apparently looking at the misfit who came on yesterday, which is Luis Palma. Strange, but I will
Yep.
take it. And of course, we've also got, as you say, Dinamo Zagreb want to take on Taylor. For you and your eye, I know you do look at a lot of the loan watch things and like that. How likely do you think those three that we've just spoke about happening are? And if they do happen, what does Celtic need to do, or will we do anything?
So I think Welsh, he's in Belgium now, is what the reports were today. He's securing that move, so that's definitely happening. Celtic have brought back Dane Murray from Queen's Park to kind of be the replacement in the squad for Welsh, if you will. I've got my own take on that situation. I think it's a poor way to treat Dane Murray, if I'm honest, bringing him back in from Queen's Park. Made 20 appearances for the club this season. He's a young player. Only 20. Yep, doing well. Won the Player of the Month award for October. It's his first real consistent run of games. He's had a horrific time with injuries throughout his young career. So to just be bringing him back to the club to fill a European quota and sit on the bench, I think it's a bad way to treat him, to be honest. But if he gets the opportunity, then it's not. And if he plays games, then it's not. But I don't think he's going to. Luis Palma, I don't think they're going to let him go until they sign a winger. So I think that's the sensible thing to do with James Forrest out injured. You've only got, if Palma went, you'd only have Yang, Kuhn and Maeda. And
of course, Jota, because he's coming back. We all know that, don't we?
No, that's a pipe dream. As much as I think it would be a great signing, but pipe dream, to be honest. So Palma, keep him until they sign a winger. And then the Taylor one, I don't know how it's going to end up. If I was putting money on it, I genuinely couldn't. I don't know what's going to happen. But one thing tells me that it will be a 9th or 6 month loan of Kieran Tierney.
Yeah, that's what my heart tells me. Or we understand. We said this the other day. He's on that around about 100 odd grand. So Celtic maybe going to offer you about 40. It's a big drop between now and the end of May or whatever it is. But even a nominal fee to just get him nice and early, they might go down that route, and he gets a wee slice of the cut on to displace the loss of wages. Perhaps that's something we'll do. But let's get on to, of course, what we've not spoke about yet, which was the performance. A couple of changes, of course, as we all expected. It was good to see Austin Trusty comes in, gets a goal, fantastic. We also got to see McCown and Engels starting, as well as Adam Eder. It was a good time for rotation. Yep, we got on it. We get there with a goal. We hear the discontent in the stadium. There's no doubt in my mind that it's the same again. It was a slow start, and I understand we're not going to cover that ground. We can't be swashbuckling all the time. But it was a very, very slow start, and you got a wee bit of Groundhog Day feeling that it was going to take its time to get there. Off the changes that we've seen, any outstanding candidates for you? Anything that pleased your eye?
Arne Engels, again, was very good in the 2 games before Ibrox, man of the match in them both, and he does really well again yesterday. I think he brings so much to that midfield. We've really seen an emergence of him, for me, over the past couple of games, couple of weeks. He was set to start at Ibrox, he was ill on the morning of the game, so he was a big miss. I don't know if it would have made much of a difference given the levels of how poor that performance was. But good to see him back in. I've said this throughout his time at the club so far, his set-piece delivery brings so much to Celtic's game. I haven't had a set-piece taker like that in a while. He's reliable from the spot. His corners are terrific. His deliveries are usually spot on, and that was the case for Trusty's goal. So really liking the look of Arne Engels. I mean, you look at throughout this kind of run of the past month, 2 months, some of the really, really good Celtic performances and some of the kind of poorer ones. It seems to be that the poorer ones, Engels isn't playing in or starting in, and the good performances like the Leipzig, like the Aberdeen semi-final, he's been at the centre of them and played in them all. So I think he's a really talented young player who's really beginning to show what he's made of now. Austin Trusty, it was, I think everyone, you would have put your house on him coming into the team for the scales after that disastrous 90 minutes for him at Ibrox. Really, really poor. His confidence would have taken a massive dent. And for me, I think Scales' display at Ibrox nails on the fact that Trusty and Carter Vickers has to be the first choice central defensive partnership going forward. I was impressed with Trusty. He had a couple of loose passes in the second half, but aside from that, solid on the whole. Him and Carter Vickers, very good partnership they're developing continually when they play next to each other. Much more, I feel, don't know if it's just me personally, but much more comfortable when it's Trusty at the centre of the defence rather than Scales.
He's certainly better from a positional sense, I
Yeah.
would say. Definitely better
definitely. And he's quicker as well. He's got a decent ton of pace. So I was impressed by him and getting the first goal. You could see what it meant to him as well, actually, when he was celebrating it, beating the badge. So good to see that.
And nice to score from a corner.
Yeah, definitely.
Second ball.
Yeah, 100%. And it was direct, straight onto his head, bang in the back of the net. Suspects admitted defending, but good from him. Luke McCowan, I didn't think he had his greatest display, if I'm honest. Couple of loose balls here and there, but for the first goal, he was a real driving force, picking up the ball in the midfield, making a good run forward, plays it wide to Maeda for Kuhn. And Kuhn, what can we say? He's now got more goal. It's either more or he's level now with Jota, his best season in terms of numbers and goals and assists, which is quite incredible. So he continues to go from strength to strength to show the composure he did for his second goal. Any other winner could have just rattled that and it would have hit off Gogic and went out. But he takes a lovely touch, opens it up for himself and taps it in. So he's been crucial for Celtic this season. He's now second top scorer in the league. Sam Dalby, who comes to Celtic Park with Dundee United on Wednesday night, has 10. Nicholas Kuhn has 9. So an opportunity to go top scorer in the league perhaps on Wednesday night, which he'll be relishing. So I think there was a lot of actually positives to take from the game, as much as the performance wasn't at the energy levels some fans perhaps expect. I think it was a really good afternoon at the office on the whole.
No, definitely. I was quite impressed with the sort of additions coming in. Trust, as you say, he offers something, I say different. The main thing is we look at, and this is maybe something we're going to have to change. We talk about these backward passes and things like that, right? But why does Scales get played? Well, it's usually because he's more comfortable taking the ball, carrying it, and looking for a pass. Mixed results, as we know, but by and large, it has been good. Carter Vickers doesn't like it. We see that. Trusty, he's never going to do anything particularly special. But I think he's the more solid option. Him and Carter Vickers are the more solid option. You're getting a bit of attacking flair, decent ball distribution out of Johnson on the right. On the left, it's always going to be a mix, as we know. We've spoken about Taylor. We don't need to cover that ground. But maybe do you think if we're going to be playing Trusty and Carter Vickers is back too, does the manager flip our reliance or his levels of expectation on the playing out from the back? I don't mean the passing and keeping possession, but I just mean we always look to go to a centre half to be the starting point. It's pretty clear we've had enough years of Carter Vickers to know that that's never going to be his thing. Is that something that can be coached into or made more comfortable with Trusty, or do we just look to completely change that? And is that maybe where a Kieran Tierney, who's far more comfortable on the ball, they then become that lead person?
Yeah, perhaps. I think what we see a lot rather, when Liam Scales plays is he's the one who's usually carrying it out from the back, and he's not very good at it a lot of the time. He can play a really good ball over the top. His long range of passing is very, very good, don't get me wrong. But in terms of short passing, he takes too much time on the ball, in my opinion. We've seen that a lot at Ibrox, unfortunately, and he can be slow. And Trusty, I think, is far superior to him on the ball, to be honest. I really like what Trusty brings on the ball. So there will be higher expectations for him because you brought him in for £6 million. And I was quite surprised, actually, that Trusty spent the amount of time out the team that he did. Come off at half-time in the cup final, and up until yesterday hadn't been seen since. For a £6 million defender, a lot of people expecting him to really establish himself as a first choice alongside Carter Vickers, and he's not fully managed to do that yet. There's still he's still not the first choice. We've seen him play alongside Scales, we've seen him play alongside Carter Vickers. So I think now, though, is the chance for Trusty to really go forward and establish himself as a first choice.
Late Popper in here, as you can see, with Paul D joining us. We've covered loads of ground, Paul. We've spoke about the manager. I'll get a wee final thought for you on that at the end. Don't want to keep the momentum and don't want to pass back and go back to a previous topic, but we're talking about the performance. We're talking about the actual game, the changes. Taylor still stays in. Trusty, McCown, Engels, Ida. Josh has been singing the praise and the impact that Arne Engels. We've been seeing a real turn of his form recently, and you're seeing it ticking in the game. What was your thoughts, Paul, on McCown and Ida's contributions, and particularly Ida's contributions in that game?
Hi guys, sorry about the late arrival, just popping in, a few things on the go, so good to see you again. Ida, for me, is trying his bit, but I think he's going to need consistent starts from the beginning. The wee bits that he's played here and there are all very well, but he needs to build a real head of steam. I think it will be next season, potentially, or the end of this season, much as we saw last season when he was coming on to games and, contributing towards the end of the season. But he needs to get service as well. There's been other aspects as to why I think he's not putting the ball in the net. He's making plenty of runs and doing his bit, but he needs to get consistent service and consistent games. I think it will come. I think it will come with the big man once he gets that wee bit of luck in front of goal. He'll go on a wee run.
Yeah, definitely. And the likes of McCowan, he comes in. Obviously, we didn't. Bernardo and Hatate, we spoke about them. Some people didn't like it. They all had a nightmare against Rangers. McCowan comes in. What did it work for you? I definitely liked what I saw with Engels. I think that we've got to keep on that momentum with him. We've got to keep him in there. I think that's been good from the manager. There's been a wee bit of sort of player management, removing him from the firing line, so to speak, bringing him in. He's unlucky to, as Josh says, bit of illness against Rangers. Would it have made much of a difference? Hard to tell. By the time he comes on, the game's gone. But press with him. But McCowan, do you sell any favours for yourself?
I don't think he done himself any harm. It just needs to be the case that he gets that wee bit where he's going to establish himself in a certain position. I feel sometimes as if when he's been playing at the moment, he's so keen to make an impression that he's getting dragged all over the midfield sometimes. A wee bit ragged, but I think that just, again, just refining his style once he beds in. He's still settling in. He knows what the club's all about. He's a great player. We've seen that from, the flashes that he's had. Again, it's just about consistency with him as well. I just think he is so keen to do well. Like Ida, they've got that kind of passion where they want to go forward and want to do their bit for the club and establish themselves in this starting 11. Mm-hmm. And it really does depend on what the starting 11 is going to be. But there's plenty of room for rotation as these games come thick and fast. So I think we'll see plenty more of both.
Yeah, we've got to utilise that squad. In terms of yourself there, Josh, Ida, I wouldn't say he's cutting a frustrated figure, but certainly fans I've seen quite regular. There's a lot of people questioning is it reactionary, the old way their pants pulled down, he's never this, he's never that. When you look at his minutes to goals contribution, it is on paper very good for the limited minutes he's got. Is this going to have to be a stage where we're really just going to have to persevere and we're going to have to do what we did yesterday and give him the bulk of the game, knowing that he might not score, but getting him more familiar with playing? How do we get the best out of Adam Ida here?
I think there's still a lot of development to go for me in terms of Adam Ida's overall game. His first touch is very poor still, in my opinion. I think that was evident a lot of times the weekend. I think Celtic, if they're going to persevere with him, you need to obviously give him starts. Starts on Sunday. Whether he's going to get the nod again on Wednesday night remains to be seen. He's shown, like you say, in the limited minutes that he's got, his goals per minute ratio, I don't have it to hand right now, but I assume it is pretty decent, probably sitting at 100, maybe 110, which is not a bad return. I think the same goes for Kyogo as well. So, listen, Celtic don't have one of the two strikers this season who are really taking the bull by the horns and scoring lots of goals. But one man who is making up for it is Nicholas Kuhn, and that's absolutely fine. As long as the goals are coming from somewhere, I think it's good. He's still a young player, still only 23. I think Celtic did overpay. I've said that a lot of times in terms of they left it too late. Kyogo had a slight injury issue. Norwich knew Celtic needed a striker. Norwich knew that Ida was the only option Celtic were going to go for, so they could demand a high fee. And the fact they helped win Celtic the double as well last season didn't really much help either. And that's another point as well, actually. Didn't get the full pre-season, didn't come until middle of August, end of August. So once, like you say, he gets a full pre-season. I think he does alluded that to himself, actually, at some point, come to think of it, that actually he was taking a while to get up to speed in terms of fitness with the rest of the group were, so he was a bit behind at the start of the season. He came in, he had a wee good run of form, actually. Scored against Bratislava, scored the 2 goals against Falkirk when he got the nod. It really turned the game around that day. Also scored 2 at Tynecastle, so has been popping up with goals here and there. And it's a lot of the time it's been when defences have tired and when you've brought him on and he's made the impact off the bench. But when you start him as a £9 million striker, you'd be looking for goals a lot of the time. And I think that's what fans think.
And with that, Paul, he gets really, to my eye, one properly decent chance. It comes over the top, he rattles the bar, and then he falls up. All right, he's offside. But again, coming back to this, the amount of chances that are presented to him, he almost takes it. Is that fair? I mean, I thought good finish when he takes it, mate. But it obviously hits the bar a bit fortuitous, and he falls up. He does the right things, and it's very similar to it just seems to be a recurring theme, whether it's Kyogo or whether it's him. It's finding them. That's the problem that we seem to have. Kyogo was found once in the game against Rangers. Again, it was offside. But he puts it in the net. And again, the one time that we really find Ida properly, he does put it in the net. It's offside. I'm quite surprised. Did it surprise you that with him on that we didn't try to adapt the way that we play? Because we've spoke about it before. You would think that the good thing about Ida is that you can fire it into his feet and he'll hold it up and stuff. And I think maybe for me, the one frustrating thing that I've seen from him, there was a couple of times we did rifle the ball into feet where he's back to goal. And instead of holding it up and trying to do what you would maybe get from I know it's hard, a Sutton or a Hartson, but you'll get that yard, they'll push and they'll spin and look for the shot. He tries a layoff, he tries a wee fancy flick. Again, that's just teething problem with a guy that's not playing enough.
I don't know whether there's an argument in terms of this two up front might be a kind of formation that would suit Ida better. I don't know. I didn't know much about him, to be honest, when he was down south.
A little and large, Kyogo, big and small.
Aye, I mean, we've seen it before, I don't know what, when he was at his previous clubs, if that's something that does benefit him. But I think what's happening at the moment is the fact it's telling that we're finding our strikers are struggling to score goals sometimes because the way the midfield has been set up, it's been chopping and changing pretty much as regular as you can imagine this season. Although we've been getting away with it, but we haven't got that set starting 11, which I think would definitely benefit him. And him, like Kyogo, depending on who the manager goes with, they need to have the same players, I think, run about them. Thankfully, as you say, Josh, we have had goals from elsewhere, from, Maeda to an extent, and more so, obviously, Nicholas Kuhn. So I think if we just get a settled kind of 11 going forward in the second half of the season, that's what I keep going on about. I just think that'll be so consistent, and Ida will then crack on, I think, and start putting the ball in the net more regularly.
Yeah, I'd like to see it. And that's the thing. Similar to Engels. Engels is getting the game time and he's been pushing on. Yeah, he's had these wee dips. The unfortunate thing is always going to be, people are always going to be looking at these price tags that hang over both of them. But I always feel that particularly when you're a striker, striker's a commodity where you are judged solely on your output of goals. You can be a midfielder and you maybe don't have the great goal ratio or assist ratio, but there's something that you offer. You break up play fantastically. You give it to people, or you have a good delivery, or you're whatever it may well be. You can have a multiple bits of your game that will, hide. Oh, he's really good at that. He's the best in his class at that. But when you're a striker, all you've got to do is put the ball in the net. I say all you've got to do, but that's your job. And that's the unfortunate thing. He's going to get judged on that. We need to find a way to work him on. But in terms of guys trying to impress, we spoke about it. Some subs come on. We get Hatate. He comes on, much maligned recently. Don't need to cover all ground. I don't think he came on and really changed the game too much. Didn't do anything great. Didn't do anything bad. Strange one. Palma and Yang. Hey, Josh, Palma and Yang, for you, is this just game's gone? We've won it, throw them on.
Yeah, definitely. Luis Palma's a fourth choice winger at the minute. It would be fifth choice if James Forrest is fit. Him coming on simply to protect Daizen Maeda and ensure he didn't get injured. That's the sole reason. I think Palma will be away by the end of the month anyway. Yang, he's the only real option the manager has because James Forrest doesn't fit. So I think there's an argument. There's a player in Yang. He just needs a consistent run of games, I feel. So if you put him out on loan somewhere for the second half of the season, that would be ideal. But at the same time, you need to have wing cover in the building, and Celtic don't have that at the minute. So once they add one or maybe two wingers, it's time to get rid of Yang on loan. But I think Palma is definitely one where you need to permanently shift him this month. Yeah,
definitely. Well, yourself, Paul, just to really touch up before we send this one home, overall, off the back of that disappointing, there's the word, performance against Rangers, and of course, was that the reaction you were looking for it there? And just give us a wee quick condensed version. I've heard ourselves, I've heard mine's and Josh's opinions on the stuff around about the manager, but just give us, what was your thought? Was that a suitable reaction? The result's all that matters, but did that feel like the reaction we were looking for? And what did you make of the manager?
We spoke a wee bit about it in the group chat, obviously, while the game was going on, and there was periods of the game where you were thinking it's just slipping back into that kind of, malaise, if you like, at times. However, we got the result. There's a lot of games coming up, as we've all discussed and we've all heard. The manager's aspect to do with that, I'm not really reading too much into it, if I'm honest. He's been not happy about what's been getting sang. I think maybe he's taken it out of context a wee bit, that the players have not been, the fans have not been singing about Kieran Tierney as to try and cause any issues or aggravation for Greg Taylor. I think it's just, it's on the media, it's in the news, it's in the stands, everybody's talking about it. It's a big deal, a big move, so it's going to generate a bit of a sing-song potentially, and that's what's happened. So I think when the manager got asked at the press conference, he was obviously talking about the backwards play and the sideward play and how that's been getting some mumbles and groans from the stands, justifiably so. But when you look at the big picture, it's all about resetting the base of the attack and everything else. And at the end of the day, people pay their money, they're entitled to sing and to say what they want. But I think the manager's just been on a bit of a roll when he's been asked that question. It's probably a wee bit cute with the guy on the back of the fact that he was kind of having a wee bit of a moan, and then he's asked that quick fire, and he's got a wee bit of fire going. So I'm not reading anything into it. It is what it is. He's had his wee shot across the fans' bows in relation to it, but people can go on with it, and I don't think we'll hear any more about it. But the game, 3 points, wasn't quite with swashbuckling levels.
That word again.
I love that word, I know. But basically, the win is the main thing, and we were back to winning, goal scoring, clean sheet form. So that's really, compared to what we had the game before, we'll take that every day of the week.
Find ourselves in a good position. Looking elsewhere, guys, just to finish up, of course, we sat here, and what did we say, Paul? We say, I would not be surprised if Rangers went out and took a draw against Hibs. It's good. We can laugh about it. Of course, we can laugh it up. It went for nothing in the end. And there you go. That's the nature of football. I think, Josh, it is what it is. It just makes that more annoying, doesn't it? It just makes it more frustrating.
For me, not particularly. I think in general, like, a loss to Rangers at some stage by the law
Has
of
to happen,
averages was going to happen. What's even funnier for me is 2 weeks ago, either 2 or 3 weeks ago, Celtic were 9 points clear at the top of the league. They have gone to Ibrox, lost 3-0, and are 13 points clear.
Yep.
It's quite incredible.
Funny old game.
Exactly.
And we got to see Quan marauding about, Nico Raskin, Captain Fantastic Mark II, wasn't so fantastic when you're getting taken on by the Quan artist and not looking that great. So I'll take that as well. That was, for what it was worth, it was good to laugh. And I'm sure that you'll listen to a certain radio station tonight. I'm really interested. I'm going to tune in tonight because I think it could be a real mixed bag, this one. There's going to be people on there talking about what we've been talking about. There's going to be people on there who are not too happy with the manager. And of course, you're going to get people who are not too happy with the manager because their team are garbage, not winning. They'd rather that he was saying something to annoy them and getting results. But yeah, it's a lot of football. But finally, just to finish off, we'll look ahead. We've got a Dundee United side coming to Celtic Park. Again, home advantage. What's the turnout going to be like? Hard to tell. These winter games and the up and down, but hopefully a good full house. It's always nice under the lights at an evening game. The opposite are playing the other Dundee. Tough game there with their away forum. What are you looking for from the players, Josh, in that game? And are you looking for anything for the manager after that?
I think it's going to be an interesting game. Dundee United sit third in the table right now, so they are in good form. They took points off Celtic a couple of weeks ago at Tannadice. I think we all know what they're going to do. Jim Goodwin against one of the big two in the country, just sitting, total sitting. 11 men behind the ball. It's going to be tough to break down. I think there's going to need to be an element of patience within the crowd that it's going to be difficult to break down that stern, tough back line. At the end of the day, a back Celtic is always to get through and make the breakthrough and win the game comfortably. The manager, if he doesn't have a press conference before the game, what he says after it should be interesting. Personally, I think the Kieran Tierney chants on Wednesday night are only going to be louder than what they were at the weekend.
Would it surprise you if there was perhaps a banner unfurled?
Oh, no, not at all. I think there will be, actually, probably a banner when you think about it. Team selection should be interesting. We'll just have to wait and see on that. But I think it should be a comfortable victory, but it will be a difficult game because Dundee United, they have the top goal scorer, Sam Dalby, so they do have a threat up top, and they're also usually stern and stubborn at the back and tough to break down, particularly a Jim Goodwin team. So with a tough game in that sense, but you back Celtic to get through.
Definitely. And final word to yourself, Paul. Send us home. Talk to me about this game against Dundee United. Where's it going?
Same 11 for me. Start this game that started the last game. Keep Hatate on the bench. Go with the same midfield. Trusty at the game there at the weekend impressed me without doing anything really spectacular, but he looked solid enough. Again, he just needs to get more games and get in there with Carter Vickers and develop that partnership the way it was looking back, some of the European games, etc. As Josh says, they will be stubborn and physical. We've had a few sore faces recently, Nicholas Kuhn and different players, but we need to start dishing a wee bit out. Games like this is where it really is going to get quite physical, and we'll have to match that. So I think we should be fine. We're back to that kind of free-flowing football. Kalmack looked a bit more lively, so he'll be driving things. Same 11, and I'm not going to make any predictions, but I think we'll be victorious.
Don't predict anything. And what about box office Brendan, Paul? Did we go out and then typically we dispatch Dundee United 4-0 or something, and we get something along the lines? I hope that was attacking enough for you.
Well, that's it. There's been a few wee comments recently. I spoke about it before the Rangers game. He was doing the old, bits and back and forth with the media and talking about some of the things that's been out recently, and it kind of blew up, you could say, in his face. Well, as long as we get a win, I think.
Here's something to remind yourself of before we go away. Remember what happened the turn of the year. Mm-hmm. Brendan Rodgers, Brendan got a bashing. Mm-hmm. Brendan Rodgers got personally offended by comments in the media and comments with fans. Mm-hmm. What happened after that? Celtic went on, swept all aside.
That's the thing. That's
it. We find ourselves almost a year on, pretty much a year on.
Yeah.
Get Brendan Rodgers, Brendan has been bashed. He's been questioned. It wouldn't surprise me if we got a repeat again, and I'm all there for that. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for taking the time to join us, particularly yourself, Paul, for joining nice and late. And as always, Josh, really appreciate it. We'll be back throughout the course of the week. Obviously, we've got the midweek game. Maybe try and get out in the early morning. We'll see how things go, but make no bones about it. We will be back anyway to talk about it, whether it's before and or after the game, and hopefully it's another 3 points in the bag for Celtic. And you know what? I'll say it again. I wouldn't be surprised if the other team don't win the game either. So there you go. Enjoy it. Take care of yourselves. And as always, hail, hail. See you all later. Thank you.